Okay, so I will call this meeting to order. Meeting of the facilities, what are we calling it again?
Capital Planning
Capital Planning
Subcommittee.
We'll go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Sarah Williams. I'm a member of the school committee from Blackstone.
Tara Larkin, school committee member from Millville.
Matthew Plant, parent, Blackstone.
Matt Aaronworth, Assistant Superintendent.
And I am Greg Smalley with DRA Architects.
Great. We'll have some more members showing up and they will introduce themselves as they arrive. We're gonna skip over approving the minutes and head to update from the facilities working group.
So it's a small update this time. We've had some preliminary work done by Northern Energy on looking at some improvements to the school and rebates and things of that nature. They also gave us some information on solar incentives and kind of where paybacks would be on a rough square footage basis for the buildings. End of next week, we are doing a site walkthrough with an electrician to start looking at actual hard numbers on LED upgrades in all 5 buildings of the district. And then the search is on for a facilities director for the school district. I know some of the interviews have been conducted, and my last conversation with Matt, they're hoping to have that position filled and someone in beginning of August if everything goes well. Did I miss anything, Matt?
No, you covered it all very
Perfect.
well. Thank you, Matt. And now back to you, Matt.
It's a really easy small group, so we can roll fast through this.
Certainly.
All right, next we have review of notes. What do we need to do with that?
That's where I planned on kicking it over to Greg. I'm going to find his, just pulling up some documents.
Was everyone able to click on the link and get it? Okay, it took me a few tries, but I figured it out.
Oh. Mine opened.
Greg, were you able to have a conversation with the other demographer?
Yes.
Okay.
And they are not going to be able to
Accommodate?
accommodate or take this on.
Oh.
They are, they're going through some personnel shifts, and so they're not shopping or taking in any other work until probably end of August, beginning of September.
Okay.
So I placed a call to Art Wagman to, because I do not have his proposal or scope, so I asked him to give me a call. I can go through that with him.
Do you want me to forward that to you? Because
Yeah.
I do have his.
Yeah, that would be great.
We'll check that I have it. Okay. Probably Jason.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have pizza.
No.
I'd say last guy shows
Thought
up
he was
brings
supposed
coffee,
to-
but it's too
I
hot
thought
for
he
that.
was supposed to
Wise.
bring the pizza.
I was supposed to bring pizza?
Yeah.
Last one in the meeting supposed to bring coffee or
I
pizza.
would-
It's
I
too
would.
hot for coffee.
Sorry.
He opened the door at Little Caesars and turned around.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Greg, I just forwarded that to you.
Okay. That sounds good. So what we did last time, as Jason gets to, gets in sync here, was I forwarded you my notes along with some add-ins and some suggestions for topics each time. So that was a pretty extensive set of notes, and I think if we break it down into pieces, it might let us get through the next couple of months pretty forthrightly. I actually think tonight's probably fairly light, in trying to finish up on the discussion of what we might do educationally, and so that was probably the point that most people were focused on at the last meeting, and I got quite a bit of discussion going. So I did follow up on a few of the pieces that were on our side of that. In relative to, within the educational piece, the idea of the Chapter 74 and CTE programs and integrated into general curriculum schools. I talked with a couple people running the 74 programs, and generally, if they can be shown to not be pulling away from your regional technical school, they'll be entertained. So the question there would be, how extensive is Blackstone Regional Prep, or that's the name of it, right?
Valley Tech.
Valley Tech. How extensive their listing is, and is there enough of an opening in there to pull out some other programs? And then if we did that, is there enough interest within the school, or do you do it as an expansion for all of the other high schools in the area? So you run kind of a quasi-regional program like you're doing now. I guess in a way that's kind of formalizing what you're doing and moving it from evening and weekend into a daytime offering across a bunch of schools. The people I talked to at the regional school, I know you guys know them.
Mars, Massachusetts
Yes.
Association of Regional Schools.
They
The men you spoke to from Mars.
yeah, from Mars, yeah. So I had talked with Jay Barry, who was superintendent out in Southwick, and he was kind of leaning on their curriculum piece. He said he doesn't know of anyone who's doing that and working across a number of schools. So I think it would be interesting to have that conversation maybe at the state level with the folks who administer and oversee the 74 programs. Say if we identified a bunch of programs not big enough to fit into Valley Tech, not big enough to, or too big to fit into a single school, could we do it across a number of schools and create kind of a, not quite ad hoc, but a different approach to that?
Would
So-
we be, I'm sorry to cut in. When you mention the regional vocational school, would we be limited only to programs that they're not offering, or is it so long as we're not usurping every program that they offer, or doing some type of, blend of, or different, like slightly different offering, can we move ahead?
I think you would have to be probably a little bit more than slightly different. They're going to be pretty protective of that, the tech school. So my guess is that if you were completely different and the tech school had no interest, you would probably get an audience. If you were close but slightly different, you'd probably be told no. And that's just me surmising what
Yeah.
conversation I was at of late.
So it sounds like we've got to have a different, like,
Yes.
our program offerings can exist, but they have to be different
Right.
than the tech.
And then in that, from what we've seen so far, if it was possible to do it, then there is a reasonable chance that that funding would be available to support that program, either in the form of a one-time grant, renewable grant, or for construction, if there was some support there. And once again, we're treading on some ground that most people I talk to are saying we haven't seen this yet. We know people are talking about it, we haven't seen it. And then, so,
It's all
Right.
hypothetical.
yeah. So my thinking on this one is that if we're interested in it, maybe we reach up towards the state and say, what's possible? What can we do with this? And kind of coach it in the idea that doing this is really maximizing their investment in their buildings, and it's opening up more educational opportunities for people. But shaping it sort of to fit as we go might be the hard part. Another one that we talked about was the idea of getting some funding in, and there is, and Jason, you may know this one, the Innovative Pathways
Yep.
curriculum. Okay.
Sure. Yep.
So that was one that was suggested to me by two different people to explore as a way of perhaps expanding the offerings, and probably equally as importantly, being able to free up some grant money on that one. So you probably know more about that one than I
Yes.
do, and could probably move us further along. Because that was sounding similar to the Blackstone Valley Excel program. It was
Yes.
kind of like, when it was mentioned to me for the second time, I said, well, you're already partway down that path.
Right.
And thinking the right way there. So that was the follow-ups that I had on the education piece. The other questions were kind of for the CTE schools, does their programming split between CTE and general curriculum? And generally, it's written as a full curriculum. And then the Chapter 74 in the general curriculum school, is there any allowance in there? And those seem to be just written into a student's curriculum. So it's a standard day, but instead of electives, they'd be in the Chapter 74 program. So the driver for us, or the important thing for us, is it doesn't look like building separate parts of the building, or building a building that can function in two different ways. So that I think is mostly what I was after with that question. So I think that probably took us through most of what I had down as notes on education and programming. And then it was a matter of what continuing discussion anybody might have on the idea of the educational program. We seem to carry quite a bit of it at the last week's meeting, or earlier this month. And so I had put on here the potential of talking about from education over to grade configuration, because those two seem to align pretty closely. But if does anybody have anything more on the education piece? I mean, we talked it through for quite a while earlier in the month.
And I think Jason was not here. We did reach out to the demographers. I know it's kind of a separate bucket, but I got a proposal from one of them, and then the other one, Greg just informed us, is not taking on any new business right now.
Okay.
So I'll reach out to and see if I could find any alternatives. But the initial proposal from Wegman seemed reasonable. I just need to review with you and Art the scope.
Yeah, now that I have the scope, I can look through it and make sure we're getting what we need.
Yeah, it's
there.
aligned.
Okay. So, trying to think of what else we had here. It was a lot of circling back on education.
I have a feeling that conversation will circle back to after we start talking about the building, the actual, okay, how are we going to design the building?
That's exactly it. That's exactly what I'm thinking. It's like, to plan what we want to do at the high school will kind of rely on decisions on what we want to offer.
Yeah.
So rely on it, so.
So the one that was interesting, and Matt, this went to a bunch of what you were saying. I sat in on a seminar today for Charette High School in Providence. It's a charter school. It's downtown, and it focuses on urban planning and historic buildings. And they do a 4-year program that is topped by a capstone project, and it's all focused on just urban planning. And the from the first year to the fourth, they're identifying a unique aspect of urban planning and urban living. I was wondering, could you take that into either a broader context?
Gosh, is that a specific?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know at 12 that you want to be an urban planner?
Well, that was the thing that threw me. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
so what they
I mean, I love the concept though, but like,
yeah.
But you know what though, listening to you, I could see that
cool.
being
It's just like-
such a large project type thing,
Oh,
the
yeah.
urban planning.
Yeah.
You could
Do a
teach
ton of
all
different
of the
skills.
different content
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
that lens.
Just
And
what
that's
a
exactly
specific
what
mission
they're
yeah,
doing.
of
yeah,
the building.
exactly. Urban
what can
planning.
you take-
It's
so-
huge.
Forgive the guy who's not an urban planner.
I don't know
But
that
I think
any
I
of
know
us
what
are.
But like, how many other things could you wrap into that? And that was kind of the cool thing about my tech education was
Sure.
you wrapped your math in, you wrapped your English in. You know, my English class, we did technical writing my sophomore year. Like, you got to wrap in all these subjects that made my boring English class seem so much, no offense to the English teachers, made that English class seem so much better. Or, we wrapped, like when I went into physics, we started talking about thermodynamics, which is college level stuff, but you're able to get high schoolers to engage in that because of trades that they're taking. So could you take something like an urban planning or, something maybe a little more wide reaching that's just going to give someone a foundation for life later to a critical thinking course, a debate kind of a course, and turn that into a 4-year offering that, sure, maybe no high schooler is really going to be an urban planner, but you can wrap enough other stuff into it that you'll get some real engagement from these students.
My guess is that's what they do, right? It's part of some of that, yeah. It just
exactly
makes
what
sense,
they're
but it's
doing.
just, when you look at it from the outside, it's
Yeah.
like,
It was very much, it was project-based learning from beginning to end, without a doubt, but,
But you got your math, your science, obviously your tech engineering. You've
well, the
got-
one they talked about today was, how do you address homelessness in a city, which is a big part of urban
It's
planning.
great.
it's huge.
Yeah.
So they went out and they talked to homeless people, they talked to the homeless shelters, they brought in people to speak
awesome.
at the school, both homeless people and people who were working to, and then they talked about the finances, they talked about the legislation. So it went through all the aspects
Yeah.
of what you needed to learn through that lens, and that was just one of them on homelessness.
Yeah, and getting civics and everything else involved.
Incredible,
That's,
yeah.
that's an awesome idea.
Yeah, so I was listening to it and thinking, could you do this as if not a full 4-year program, could you do it as a 2-year capstone?
Well, and I
project?
wonder, do students get that though? Like the adults get it around the table, but do the kids see that?
Mm-hmm.
Do they understand like the scope and the depth of those particular skills that they will, acquire through that?
Right.
Like and I wonder how that's
Do you,
marketed, explained, and,
mean-
and packaged for them so that they understand the bigger picture.
I'll get some info on it, that's an
I'm
interesting
really curious
question.
because I know there's also like Rhode Island Middle College for nursing.
Yep,
Right, like that's interesting. And what I've learned through that, the majority of those students do not go to nursing school.
right.
They don't want to. And first they do, and then they do, and they're like, I'm not sure I want to do this. And they decide to do something new, which is fine. But I just wonder about that because it's such a important part of what you're going to do next. Career, college, 2, 4, certificate programs, whatever that is. I just, it's interesting.
Well, the thing with Charette is they just graduated their first class, and now we can start to see where they're going to.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, yeah.
Their second class is coming up now, so they are a full 9 through 12 program with one graduated class, so 5 years of classroom experience now.
Do you know how many students were in their graduating class?
Judging by the size of the group walking down the street, I'm going to say between 2 and 3 dozen.
Okay.
Okay, yeah,
that's a small program.
Yeah. Feeling air conditioning?
I just felt the air. I think it's
felt
coming
a small
finally.
breeze. Someone moved their arm really quickly.
Oh,
and-
do it again then.
Tying that into the grade configuration piece, I mean, I think, as you mentioned, it's a clear bridge between the educational program and the grade configuration.
Yep.
Because I think of, like the middle level where we're starting the career exploration. And if we're designing a building or a program, should it be 7 through 12? Or does it start 6 through 12? I know I came from a charter program which was a middle school program. It focused on expeditionary learning.
Mhm.
And we had capstone projects in every grade, and there was a lot of really project-based learning going on. And the talk then, when I was still there, was, should we be expanding this to the high school, to the high school level? And our conversations were, how do our kids fit back in to the high school level when they go back out to either Catholic
Right.
schools or their general public school? But they were there for a reason. I think we can be catching our kids here at the earlier grades and kind of roping them in. I know that we've had those conversations,
yeah.
but
It's important.
I think
Yeah.
looking at like the capacity in this buildings, I think that's gonna help dictate what we should be doing for grade configuration too. Is do we need, because of, in order to have MSBA agree to this, right? We need to get these numbers higher, or is that really not a big deal? I don't know if I understand that part, I guess. I know we're at pretty much, it looked like half capacity in each of our buildings based on what MSBA had.
Yeah.
So the only thing is they won't give us the funding if we're not
Well,
closer to capacity?
they'll give us the funding for that amount of
Yeah.
kids
Per
that
square
we're gonna
feet.
be housing in the building. And then
Okay.
the rest of it is on us.
Right.
All right,
Yeah, and they'll push you to rationalize the buildings.
Right.
yeah.
And which is kind of what we're pushing for is you don't want to own more than you need because it costs money to own it.
Yeah, running dead
And-
space.
and-
Yeah.
You don't also want to be hamstrung by the guidelines if your program needs something different or if the community needs something different. So if it's slightly bigger that makes the community comfortable, then that's not the worst thing to happen either. It just means that the funding from the state only works to a certain percentage. But the other thing I want to see what I can look at, back to the educational models, the Connecticut Magnet School programs. I designed quite a few of those, programmed quite a few of those schools, but their push was to stretch from early childhood all the way up through high school. And now, in quite a few of the regional service providers, they do have that model. So let's see what I can find out about how the success is of if the
And that's
kids.
in one building?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
there'll be, through a number of buildings, and some of the bigger ones will have a number of different focuses for their magnets. But what I'm interested in is how do they start at the elementary school level to be broad enough to not be siloed? As I programmed a K through 6 science and engineering model, but it also had a middle school and had a high school right above it. So if you started in that school, you were pretty much going right through
Up,
in
yeah.
science and math, science and engineering. So, yeah, ask a 12-year-old, ask a 6-year-old, you want to do science? Sure. But that was also paired, half of it was science and engineering, the other half was Japanese culture. So it was Far Eastern culture, so it was an interesting school to program. So I'll check in on those and see if I can find some statistics or some points of interest that we can talk about.
So we already have things that we do really well here. And I feel like, and I wasn't at the last meeting, I did go through the notes and I never caught but I feel like we need to, we don't want to lose sight of that. Or is it something that maybe we don't want to be known for? But I think it's already very obvious. We have a lot of kids leave that go into the arts. You know, our valedictorian this year and many years they leave and they're going for their degrees in art. And we also have a national championship music program. So maybe we need to think about highlighting those items that we already do very well. I also think we typically have a huge interest in theater. We don't usually have a very big opportunity, or we have a club. But what about a performing arts or a theater and arts
Well, that's what I was wondering about.
along with our pathways that we're introducing?
When you talk about magnet schools, that's what I,
Right. We already have that
you have a
from
strong program. I mean,
we
you wanna
do.
build on your strengths, right?
We do. You don't want to lose the kids that think, oh, I don't want to go to an art school, a performing arts school. But so how do we encompass the sports with that, I guess?
So I'd be curious, do you guys, and I'm sure one of it's somewhere in the district, but do you have numbers on year to year how many kids are taking band, how many kids are in marching band every year? And the only reason I say that is because I remember growing up, this town was our track and field team, our cross country team, our band, right? Those were, the cross country team, everybody talked about that.
Yeah.
And the band, the national championship marching band. But I feel like the band doesn't seem as big as it used to. Now, is that just a matter of we've lost graduating classes used to be bigger, so now they're smaller? Or is there still as much interest, and some of us are, and we're being nostalgic of band? Like you talk about drama. My daughter's in the drama club. They barely have enough kids to be able to put on a show every year. They can't get more kids to want to come do it.
You think you could get it if it was a middle high school program?
It is a middle high school program. She started
And
in.
we're all together?
So, and that's
But that's how it
what
used
I
to
mean.
be. It
Where
was junior, senior high school, and
Yep.
when you were in 7th grade, you were in marching band. Now 7th grade is here, and you're invited if you meet, if you meet the,
and I know the school's
that
music
they're
program is
looking
not
for.
what it used to be. I mean, I know that whether it's a
and
funding
band
issue or
used to start
whatever.
in 4th grade, now it starts in
Yep.
5th grade. So we've lost things with budget cuts through the years. But I think the biggest change was moving the 7th and 8th grade to this building.
And some kids definitely stay in district for band.
Yep.
But the numbers are definitely down, I think, because of the kids who do choice out for other reasons,
Yeah.
like other.
But just so you know, we
education.
have been national champs for the last 3 out of 5 years.
I have a friend whose son just graduated
Yeah.
from BMR, was part of the marching band.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to make it, well, we're gonna be a magnet
No.
school, right?
No, I
But
mean,
could you
but
make
we
it a
already do it
pathway?
well, so
Or are
What
we
do we do
limited to
to-
making, like, certificate programs our pathways? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think these are great. I think these are excellent questions, and I think, and I wonder if the answer is a little bit of all of this. Like when I think about, because when I look at our recent numbers, so to get to your question, we have about a third of our students that participate, period,
In band.
in everything. So about 2/3 of our students are not involved in anything.
Okay.
No clubs, activities, sports, band, nothing, right? So that if you just look at kind of the aggregate, right, it's a little bit less than that in terms of participation. So it's more like somewhere between 25 and 30% of kids actually involve themselves in something outside of like their classwork. So that's about 70, percent of students that are not involved in anything we do outside of classroom work. That's a huge number of. So I wonder about that. I wonder about how do we capitalize on our strengths and expand those, and then how do we build some of the voids that we have through some of the career.
Does building some clubs over the next couple of years to see where students go, I mean, that just takes an adult to supervise, right? Do you start building you already have a drama club, so can you build a band club, right? That's not just a marching band, but is more of a different style of music. See if you can pull kids that way. Can you build an after-school literature program? I mean, it just requires finding, I assume, an adult to supervise. Can you build some of that and see if as we get deeper into those discussions, some of those pathways can help you attract that 70 to 75% of kids who just go home at 2:30.
Well, I think part of what you're up against is the facilities are a bit outdated. So a facility for a performing arts program is going to be able to produce and present CGI, electronic materials, have a full fly, have all those pieces that might seem peripheral, but if you get involved with Broadway productions, they are part of the game.
but
And-
we do have the PBS.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're just not, it feels like we'd need to gel them,
Yes.
But I do want to point out that when I'm saying that our valedictorian left for art, I mean art, like graphic arts and art, I'm not even speaking of music and theater. That's about the only shop that we have left here that was graphic arts. That never left. Photography and Photoshop have kept up with the tech piece, but those are the classes that the kids are taking to use their skills. So
I think, and Jason and I know that we've spoken earlier about this consortium that Jason's a part of, and that was part of the initial conversations when you guys were discussing, well, we have certain offerings that you can send your kids to, and you have certain offerings that we could send our kids to. We were discussing, that we have our music program and our band program that other kids may want to choice into. So I think to Jason's point, I don't think it's one or the other. I think, as you said, maybe that's one of the career pathways or options that we have in the programming. And when you mention that, I think to myself, my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law are on Broadway, and they have made a career of it. but one of the most lucrative and probably the most populated sections of that is also like set design, so that's part of theater also. And then you think about the engineering and the structural piece to that.
Technical side of it,
The
running the
technical
lights and the
side.
sound and
Right. So
all those
again,
things that
yeah.
these kids can't get a chance to learn.
that gets into like how do you cover the content that high school has to have through that career pathway. So then I think that's part of the curriculum brainstorming of the offerings and making sure we're meeting our requirements, which we have as a comprehensive high school, as Jason said. So.
Are you finding the high schools that are doing this work are trying to stick with their, like, that kind of comprehensive, we're going to be all things, all people kind of focus? Sticking with the academics, but having a couple of pathways and a couple of options? Or are you finding that just blowing it out? And they're trying to really do, like, rigorous coursework through all APs, lots of different career pathways, lots of different internship opportunities? I mean, are you finding, like, where are you seeing the patterns, and where are people having most success when it comes to like building design to go with that?
Yeah, I think
What I'm
it's,
asking?
it's closer to your first,
Okay,
the general curriculum to make sure no one falls through the cracks.
that's kind of been the focus.
Yeah, and then the career paths over here. I think the more successful pieces are probably, unfortunately, more in the urban settings, like high-tech high and that type of
Yep.
stuff, where you can say to somebody, come in here and we'll get you through this, but not only just surviving. It's a matter of learning. We'll give you that opportunity.
You know what's interesting? So their curriculum, the Summit model that High Tech High uses, the Summit learning platform, we tried to bring that here. We had very little interest.
Really?
Yep, it was all personal learning, personalized learning. We
Right.
actually, myself and two principals flew to San Francisco. We got a grant. They
Right.
flew us out there to meet with in the leadership team from across the country.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't get traction here. We tried like heck. We could not get traction.
Yeah,
It was
that's-
all project-based learning.
Yep.
We
It
couldn't-
seems to work
couldn't get it up.
better in the urban districts for some reason.
Yeah.
As we had, a client of ours is Windsor Locks over in Connecticut. And the superintendent there had project-based learning from pre-K all the way to 12th
Mm-hmm.
grade. She defended it to her death. And it was very successful. When she left, it left with her. It,
Yeah,
it
that's
just,
what
it,
happens.
it didn't,
It was literally defended to her death.
To her job.
well, I think that's what I
Did it
said.
not gain traction because it wasn't started early enough? Like, if these kids didn't get into that project-based learning early enough, does that hurt your traction?
So we started with the middle school, and then we're working actually backwards, and we were looking at that 4th and 5th grade teams at the elementary schools, and we couldn't get it going at the middle school. We couldn't get the interest. We tried it with one team. We couldn't get parent interest, student interest, or staff interest.
I feel like a bunch of the
Remember?
models.
We tried that
yeah,
a
I
couple of
totally
years.
remember
That's
that.
so the high tech high. That's the model he's talking about.
I'm surprised you never, this is the first time I've heard you talk about Summit all through the pandemic.
Yeah,
Because
I
there were
didn't
several
even-
times I was like, oh God, if we were Summit, we would be all online.
Problem.
It never came out of your mouth.
We worked on it for
That's because it failed miserably and he didn't want to
It was
remember
over a
it.
year. About a year actually. We worked on this, and we did a lot of like surveys, and we actually visited a bunch of different schools. But again, a lot of them were urban, and people couldn't get their arms around like, how would this look here?
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of data locally. We had talked about
And
that.
there was
which
no
a problem.
MCAS data.
Yeah, there was no
Right.
data to look
Right,
at like
'cause unfortunately, it circles back to MCAS,
It
right?
didn't,
Like,
yeah.
student achievement.
We're gonna
Yeah, we
have-
couldn't.
And the
we have those
scaffolding
requirements.
for
How do you
special
make
needs
sure
and
that we're
other.
gonna-
Yeah.
Meet those goals.
Doesn't mean you have to give up and abandon like the concept, but maybe that just wasn't the right platform for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it were absolutely the right program, it would be much further developed than it
Sure.
is. It works. It doesn't take a cult of personality to get it to work, but it doesn't work everywhere.
Yeah, we were looking at a small, like just one team,
Right.
and starting in 6th grade and kind of seeing like, all right, well, if that worked, we would have rolled it into 7th. So we had a 6th grade and I think a 7th grade team that were like lukewarm about trying it. They didn't love it. They weren't dying to do it, but they were kind of okay with the idea. That was about as far as we got that.
But then it was, kids could have come out at different levels, right? They were working at their pace.
Yeah.
So had it sunk, not swam, how do you get them back all into that cohesive classroom?
Like back kind of emerged
Yeah.
into, yeah.
I think you have to be fully in, or
But we have elements of that work now because we are doing both at the middle and high school some different, our like critical thinking is our instructional focus, and we're doing a lot with cognitive thinking rubrics, and particularly at the middle school, again, we're using this rubric to help drive some project-based learning that's happening in each grade level. So we introduce small pieces of it. With some reasonable success. It's interesting.
But I go back to Matt was heading down the road of, do you start with clubs, see where people go,
See where people's interest lies.
see how you can expand them. But it can't, the club can't be the end of the line. It has to kind of be, pick one, it's rocketry. Okay, well, they could build a rocket. Well, what's it made out of? Where does that come from? It kind of
And that was,
expanded
but
from
that was
there.
the, as we talk about what does our school system look like in the future, and you're trying to figure out all these pathways, and as the grown-ups sitting at the table, we all say like, oh, the urban planning thing is really cool, but do the kids get it? We'll see what the kids really draw to.
Right.
Put out a thing to all the high schoolers, or even starting at the middle school, where you have these junior, senior high clubs. I mean, take your pick, rock, engineering and chess and band and theater, and you could put all of these different groups together, and you just need if you don't get enough interest from the students, fine, the club dies. But if you get the interest, then that gives better information back to this group of, okay, we all say they love band, but really they want to build rockets and shoot rockets in outer space. Maybe we need to look more at science and technology and not at as much arts and as much arts and theater. Or no, hey, it was the arts and theater and band and stuff that really took off in the writing and critical thinking and debates, and nobody cared about building a rocket. Maybe that's let the barometer of your students, where their interests lie, guide where kind of where we go, instead of us saying, well, no, we should be a band school.
We surveyed the high school students on the the career interests. We did not do anything specific to clubs, and we could take that information and okay, now that we have this information, would you be interested in, to what degree would you be interested in certain clubs and activities? That's how we picked the biomed and the engineering pathways, and that's how we picked some of the courses that we would do through this
Daughter
collaboration.
took that biomed course. She was not thrilled.
No?
No, so she loved the course. She loved the she loved the course. There were apparently a couple of points where it got a little more gory than she expected.
Yeah. Well,
Weak
was
stomach
the crime
kids,
scene? How was
It
she
was
with
the crime scene stuff.
That's great.
It's creepy seeing that body laying there.
Because I asked her if she was going to take the second portion next year after our last meeting when you
Yeah.
said it was going to be continued, and she was like, "No, Dad, not after."
Yucky, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, the blood samples.
Operation.
But
Cross that one off the list.
but at least she.
All right.
But no, but I would say, but she talked about how much different it was of a science course and how she did enjoy that.
Yeah.
That's good.
You know what? As you mentioned earlier, the exploration of that piece is key, because I could tell you, I didn't learn until junior year in college that I couldn't deal with cutting people open, and that ended my medical career. So
See, now I know my kid's not going to be a doctor.
now you know that
You saved me 150 grand.
Exactly.
A year.
Yeah,
Trying to be nice. I didn't want you to start asking for a handbag or something,
So that might be a way to get some idea on the interest for clubs. I'm wondering if it's coached in the idea of this is not just accessory opportunity, but a pertinent or ancillary to your general curriculum offering. Some way to let a student know, you get the survey, this may actually generate a curriculum offering, depending on what's offered, because I think for the club aspect to be successful, you have to introduce the athletic side of the school to the back of house running of a theater. It takes a lot of grunt to run a theater. And I did Trumbull High School, which also has a national championship marching team and a big theater program and whatnot. They put the program together, they brought the football players through, and they said, this is all the part of the theater that we need people like you to run. And they got people like that interested in theater. So I think it's how you get that out to people is the hard part of this. and it does circle back around to the high school. If the high school is the point of interest for a lot of this, then it needs to be upgraded to support that level of engagement, which brings us around to what you said. What are you going to offer, and how are you going to offer it, and how do you make it attractive enough?
Or at least we're already good at it. Why we should not put
Not
it on the
throw it
back
away,
burner.
right.
Even whatever direction we go in, that still needs to be a highlight.
Right.
It's something we already have, I think, that
So let's go back to that. You had a focus on, you had some graduates who seem to be heading towards the arts pretty well, the championship music program, interest in theater. Anything else along those lines?
The news hour.
Do you
Yes,
the
news
PBS.
hour.
do you know where your graduates are going to school and what their majors are?
Yeah, we have that information. I don't have it like at my.
No, I not at your fingertips, but
Yeah,
that would be
we
great
could
to
get that
have for the, all right, where are our kids going? If
Yep.
70 or 80 or 90% of our kids are going to 2 and 4 year schools, what are they going for?
Yep.
Yeah. And as importantly, they went there for that, what they graduate with.
Yeah, what they changed.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
We should
that's,
go
I don't know how much of that you guys track, but I figured at least the
backwards
starting
4
point would be
years.
where are they going, and
I think this year is tough, but I think
but take a
Yeah,
take
we
a
go
5
higher.
year
backwards.
Yeah.
take a 5 year or 3 or however long it's been that you have that data for average, and just look at where are our kids going. Like, what do we want to support?
Mm-hmm.
So Jason, we have a third of students participating in like extracurriculars, right?
Yes,
Does that
collectively,
include,
yeah.
is that capturing journalism or is that
That's
not
everything.
considered a club? You know what I mean? Isn't that during the school day?
It's anything outside of, it's extracurricular athletics. It's anything outside of the school day.
So the newspaper is school day.
Yeah.
Yearbook is school day.
I mean, how many
Maybe they're
people are
not in that
participating in
number.
that?
Oh, I think they're in that number. I think
Yeah.
those offerings are considered.
Is
in
that
number.
just high school, not middle school?
No, that's district, that's across the system.
And I do feel like in the last 3 to 4 years, so, and something we should definitely use this year because we're going to have the late bus, but the clubs at this building are not even half of what they used to be. Not any fault of any one person but if we looked back 4 to 5 years ago, I mean, there was cooking club and theater club and movie club, and the maker space was up and coming. Obviously last year barely, they had a few, but I think the kids that are here now don't even expect it because they never saw it before.
Right.
So Lucas was coming in last year, and I was like, and cooking club, and there never was a cooking club this year, but COVID or not.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I was trying to get him excited, telling him, things that I knew used to be here. But they've been gone for so long that people aren't looking for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that it used to be very heavy PTO run. And there was no late bus, and they tried very hard to get one, but the kids still stayed. I mean, I remember picking up, and I think there were more kids coming out from clubs than at the end of the day this year. Parent pickup. So it's just, I think it's a cycle, and I think it would be nice to see that back here and get the kids involved.
We'll have it now at the elementary level. So in terms of your concept about like the kids just didn't expect it.
Yeah.
So there is going to be a standard that is set because we did receive that $173,000 grant
Yeah.
for
The
3
late
years.
buses are for all buildings, elementary, middle,
Yeah.
and high school.
Through the after school through the 21st century program, we have just for the summer program we have 120 kids that confirm that that's a lot. That confirmed that's good. I mean, we haven't had that, so my hope is that trickles into after school because we'll have after school programming with that.
Now, any of your clubs that are offered at the high school, like the drama club, right, is a high school club. With your grant, can you provide transportation for middle schoolers who wanted to go to that club in the high school if that club became open to both? Because when my daughter first started, we had to get her from the middle school to the high school for her to be able to do drama club, which is tough when you're all working parents.
Absolutely. Yep.
And that may be something that if there's money in that grant to run a van, a school bus, or something around to bounce some kids for clubs, that may be another way to improve the.
Participation.
And it's too bad we don't
Participation
do
of
it
the clubs.
opposite. They start here and then pick up at the high school second, but they get out earlier.
Yeah.
To switch some start and end time so that we can get the buses.
See, that would be perfect.
It really would.
But if you think that, if clubs are Tuesdays and Thursdays, to run one bus from here to there, even if it was I don't know how this works in the school day, right? But just the problem solver says, even if it was so 5 minutes early, those kids hopped on a bus, drove to the high school, got dropped off at the high school, then the high school kids packed on the bus for the bus to come back here. If there was some kind of logistics like that could be worked out, where you could get more of the middle school kids to go to those, because picking my kid up at
Bus just
5:30
stops on their way to the
after
high
drama
school
club was
anyway.
easy. Getting her at 2:30 from here and then driving her to the high school and then going back to work, then coming back to pick her up, I can't do that. So that was one of those things that might help your clubs. It might help improve some of those numbers, because now these kids are excited to stay because, hey, I've been part of the drama club for 3 years going through middle school. Like, I want to stay here. I want to keep doing this. We've had so much fun. It's been such a great group of people to work with.
We
And
had a
that,
shuttle for sports, right?
yeah,
We did.
and that's where we go
Sports.
back to this grade configuration. Do we just put?
Right, but not for
7,
clubs. We did not have a
8 at
shuttle.
No, I know, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
but if you could do it for the
Then
clubs
look at
too.
your- Look at your pathways then.
Yeah.
Because you worry about having enough kids to justify a journalism pathway. Well,
If you have
if you
seventh and
have
eighth.
7th and 8th grade offerings in that, then that, as an elective,
Yeah.
I mean,
I think we need those kids.
It sounds like we need to bring them together.
back to the high
Yeah.
school.
Yeah, which-
However,
Which sounds like we need to figure out how we're laying out our buildings.
that's the thing, the high school obviously needs major renovation. So we can have this great idea that we want them all there, but even if I don't know how long out it would take, at some point, we're gonna have to put them all back in a different building while that building's being renovated,
Yes and no. I wouldn't get that far down the road.
okay?
I think you're working in the right direction by looking at it from an educational point of view. And if you can, your problem is you get to the point where you don't have enough students to support what you want to offer, so you have to go find more students. So first you look in-house and you go, okay, I'll go get the middle school. Then you've got to tailor the program to first attract a 7th grade, to know that they're not going to be overwhelmed, and then to stay with it. So there's some programs that have a range from a 7th grader to a 12th grader can all participate at the same level. There's others that need to be staged or staggered a little bit, so that maybe the production's a little bit simpler. Maybe the investigative role is mentor-mentee between a senior and a 7th grader on a science focused project. So I think for the size of the district, you start looking at that, then if you can get that, make some shape out of that on the educational side, then you can apply it to the buildings. Does it work here, or does it work at the high school? And then you would start to fold in the funding source, because the middle school, high school will get funded differently in terms of what's available programmatically. So it's not like you absolutely have to hold on to the high school because it has the big theater. You can say, well, we want to make this a middle school, high school, and I'll put all the high school pieces over there, wherever they need to go, because this is the better investment. I think that should be our what we're eventually aiming for. Like, what do you do with the building you don't use, if that's where you get to? And what building do you start to focus on to make it what you want it to be? But I
So
think.
have we figured that out yet?
No, that was
Low-hanging
that was
fruit.
kind of the
That's
homework
this
where we
process,
dropped off
yeah.
last time was
process going on.
what's everybody's vision of where the district buildings go.
Oh, you're actually getting to it
Yeah,
now with
we're
the
talking to it.
educational piece. This is great. But I think if you can solve the idea of how do you develop enough dynamic clubs that they can morph with the environment that the students are bringing to school. You've got technologically adept kids from age 4 or 5. You've had computer literate teachers for probably 5 or 6 years now that have known nothing except computer-based learning. And you're going to have 21st century teachers in 2-3 years. And so we're not teaching school the way we were teaching it before. But more importantly, the old clubs needed to evolve. That's why they're not here anymore.
When you talk
Well,
about I'm sorry.
No, please.
I was gonna say, we mentioned the buildings now, and that gets into my head, and I think about, like, well, we talk about, do we put our middle schoolers with our high schoolers, kid grouping wise? And then where do they go? I think to myself, well, this building that we're in is the newest and probably the biggest investment from the district. And then I think, well, who could even fit here? Like, how far down could we go? Like, this building is not designed for elementary school kids,
Right.
I don't believe. You know, are there changes that we could make to this building to accommodate that, should we decide we wanted to use the high school building and move 7th and 8th grade there? Or, you know, do we maximize the use of this building and say, maybe we put at least part, if not all, of the high school programming or some of the high school programming in this building with the 7th and 8th grade, and maybe shift the 6th grade? Because that, you mentioned it earlier, I mean, the building designs are limiting, and they, you know, they have certain age levels that they will accommodate. I'm sure we can make some changes,
Yeah.
but some of them.
Third grade is your break for plumbing, size fixtures and whatnot.
Mhm.
So pre-KK is tough, first grade's kind of tough. That doesn't really fit in here, but certainly it can be made to fit.
Mhm.
Pre-KK is a little bit more physical work because of the way things are plumbed. The plumbing and whatnot is much different.
We think 4th grade would be able to come
Yeah,
into a
fourth-
building like this?
If you looked at an upper elementary setup,
Mhm.
a lower elementary, upper elementary, you could fit that in here, but you wouldn't have enough kids. So you're gonna be battling that same.
Well, what is that, 4
Building's too
through
big.
6?
Yeah, if you do 4, 5, 6.
4, 5, 6.
Could we do 3 through 6 and just make one area of the building third grade wing and do the plumbing changes required to make that?
Yeah, you wouldn't need to change anything for third grade. They're all up in the same
Does 3
size,
through 6 give us enough kids to keep this building functional?
probably.
Yeah, because
Where we're closer, because
It's
this building needs the least
840.
amount of work, and if you've already restructured K1 and 2 to be in Millville anyways, you don't want to go breaking and changing that around again, because you just fought for how long to get that all organized, because I remember that from the first meeting. So then it just becomes if this building becomes 3 through 6, you put almost back to the way it used to be, 7 through 12 at the high school. Now that leaves the complex empty. What do we do with that building becomes another conversation. And since you're talking about creating pathways and you're gonna have to do major remodels on the high school anyways, that becomes the conversation of how do you fix that building to make it functional for what you want? Or is it there is no fixing it, we have to rebuild it? Because right now, this district is at a point where, aside from this building, all of our buildings are in rougher shape. Millville's not horrible, but the complex and the high school are in any remodeling sense, are major gut and remodels. I mean, from a construction standpoint, just from what I've seen of those buildings. And I know we've done some of the projects, the roofs and things like that, but where are those buildings from a compliance standpoint? If you start doing any kind of work, you can't make those buildings ADA compliant. You can't make those buildings fire code compliant currently. I mean, you're talking about major remodels. And from the numbers I just read in your notes, it sounds like it's cheaper to build a new building than to remodel an existing. And where you're talking about the facade on the high school is starting to fall. I mean, it kind of sounds like if the high school is if anything's happening with the high school, we're building a new high school. Or we're saving a small piece of that high school so that it's a major remodel and just building off a different side of it. But
I also, to that point, I think about the properties that the buildings are on. And then we've been going through the whole conversation of what could we do with the fields and where could they go and what's here that hinders this sport from being there. And it's like, well, there's ledge back there. But if you're looking at a if you're looking at a rebuild of a high school, potentially on that same property, there's probably a lot that could be done to the property even that would open it up to make it even more accessible for sports or whatever other programs are there. Because once you're now talking about, we're doing this, we're changing it, that has the most space. And there's a ton of space there even that's not used because it's not really usable, but it
Right.
could potentially be even more effective space.
Yeah, the land holdings for the high school are pretty extensive.
Yeah.
And they range everywhere from the upper piece where the track is setting all the way down to the wetlands along the
get
stream.
rid of the rock. The rock has to stay.
that is like 50 years of high school kids that have painted on that rock.
Not much paint.
You couldn't get through that rock anyways.
I'd like to look at the educational model, particularly if we're thinking about like a 7 through 12. I really, and this isn't just me personally, but have read quite a bit of information, I'm sure everybody has around this. The freshmen need a really different construct for learning. What we have, it's common, it's like almost like what everybody has, but they almost need another year of that teaming concept that we don't do it. And frankly, part of the problem is because we have 4 or 5 teachers per department, and it runs like a real high school. So it doesn't run like a middle school or like a teaming model, but we should be thinking about, if we end up merging 7th and 8th grade in the high school, you should have a 7, 8, 9 with a teaming concept in place.
And
That
maybe
will
looping.
drastically reduce the amount of failures. I'm confident in that,
Yeah.
the amount
I
of failures.
agree.
that-
Could you keep your teaming model going further though? Like, is there benefit to keeping a teaming model where you learn to work with the same group of people? Because that's kind of what adult life is. You're working
Yeah.
with the same team of people till somebody gets fired, quits, or new hires show up.
The only place it gets hard, it's not that it's not doable, the only place it gets hard is you get to a point where some students will start doing a lot of the AP work,
Yeah, the course selection.
like the AP courses. And,
And you can't break your teams by,
well, then you're gonna have tracked, like, you're gonna have an AP team and a non-AP, like, that I don't wanna do. I don't wanna put kids that are all like an AP, you know what I mean, like in one, you're
that's
gonna have
what I
a,
was gonna say, is and you can't have
be-
the AP team and the non-AP team. I mean,
yeah, I
that's-
wouldn't wanna do that.
But we could have some components of the teaming model
Absolutely.
run straight through. I mean,
Yeah.
Figure what that would look like.
you know,
But
right
yeah, I mean,
now,
just
even
some
the-
kind of
That
a-
could be part of like a structural, like I know when we built Southbridge Middle High School, I was on their building committee, and we had separate buildings, we brought the schools together. That was one where the towns were like dead set against 2 principals, 2 entrances, 2 everything, with common shared space in the middle. And when we designed the middle school side, we actually had we had 2 teams in every grade level. We had a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade floor. There were 8 classrooms around the outside of this like team meeting space, and then each floor had a teacher meeting space. So they had their team meetings of the staff in that space. They had their like 6th grade white team or red team meetings in the like the sunken, like kind of sunken floor. What is that called? Like the tier. You sit on the floor, but it's all levels, whatever that's called. We designed it that way, and I can't remember the name of it. And then we even built in the math science classrooms, the English history classrooms, retractable walls. So you could teach a STEM class and pull the wall back and bring all the kids together. And then the walls were also all whiteboard.
Right.
So like we did like really intentional teaming kind of like concepts in that design. I have no idea how it was used because I left right before it opened. But
Well, I'll find out. I'll see if we can get a,
Got any good contacts?
oh yeah, but they're in receivership now, and it's a whole nother problem. So I don't know if we want to go that
contacts.
route, but
Speaking of contacts, I think,
just-
if I recall correctly, I believe that Hudson High School was built around the teaming model.
okay.
And I think that the sections of their building are structured in that manner.
Because that was the idea, like bring the kids together with the staff around the work, like actually put them in and then design the space. So even like your team meetings, they stepped out into their meeting, like their common meeting space, and they had morning meeting. They were
This building
supposed
was
to.
built like that. The center, I don't know what the.
Fishbowl
The
space, or
fishbowl.
what? Yeah,
It was supposed to be the team.
like that space.
Yeah. It was, I mean, the 2 hallways, it was, I wasn't here for that. I just remember hearing the
It's
stories,
like designed.
that
around
it was
The intention.
built for teams.
Yeah.
And then the center space was team space. But that makes me wonder, and I don't want to get too, but in the 60s when the high school was being built, what do you think the concept was with the room in the middle?
I'm sure there was
That's
intentional.
a common
We
space.
don't know what the
They
concept
had
was, but we
to-
could tell you what it was used for.
There had to have been intentional. I mean,
There had to be
must have been.
some that was built for something.
Maybe they wanted open
Space.
concept, but
Yeah,
not quite
when
open
you walk
classroom.
into-
I don't know. There was some
Oh, the front space.
intentionality behind that.
the in between the 2 rooms, that space.
Yeah, well, you
Foyer.
know that like
the
that
foyer
meeting
to your
space there?
classrooms.
Well, that was built.
That was always
when
where you went
kids
to get
would
yelled at.
Go out
Yeah,
and smoke
but-
too.
I'll ask my
It
mom.
had to
She used
be.
to,
There had to be a
she was part of
purpose.
that
I,
class.
I do.
Who was?
I I believe
Another.
that's that's
One
a
of the first
contributor.
classes.
Wonder,
Like
yeah.
that open
From, like,
space was
Buckley.
built
Was there
when
purposely,
high
I'm
school
sure, like, they
students
designed
would
it that way,
smoke
but-
and socialize.
Yeah, I don't, now that you
outside.
say that, I'm like, that was where you went if you were taking a test
Out in
and the
that
rest of the
little
class had
opening
moved on because
in
you
the
were
building
out.
still?
Yeah.
It was almost like a space where you could be
Students or
outside of the
teachers?
classroom but
I'm
still
saying,
talk to
I
the teacher if
believe,
you
like,
needed
you're
to,
saying when
without
it was built,
interrupting the
a
class.
lot of
But the
schools
problem
had
now is
open spaces.
security.
Kids,
The doors
They knew
to
that
those
courtyard
foyers
They
open
were allowed outside.
out, right?
Yeah.
And there's no door into your classroom. So you have this common space in the middle, you have doors that open out, so you can't barricade them if there was,
The whole
The
school
security
opens
issue.
out, don't they?
huh?
Most of the high school opens out, doesn't it? They all swing out into the
That,
hallway.
yes, but that's a
lot of
huge security issue.
So that
in
would
my
work for all
opinion.
these 7 through 9 teaming groups, those classrooms.
Yeah.
No, we need better.
Different, yeah.
But the
Is the,
security
is the
issue.
upper, is the B
We need,
wing
a- if we're
upstairs
going to
like
put
that as
any
well?
money into the, into
I only
our
ever had one
facilities,
class in B wing and it was
Wait,
201 and that was a straight walk-in class, so.
Oh, yeah.
it-
I still go back to Greg saying, take off the front of the building. That's all I
Yes.
can't get past it. I'm
I
like,
see it.
yeah, I've seen it since.
Yeah, it's, what,
Build
The-
backwards.
the attributes of that building are that core with the theater.
But then you
cafeteria
could
and gym.
keep that really developed courtyard. If we take off the three wings of that building and
That
you
would be
keep
your
the,
entrance to the school.
yeah, that
Through
courtyard would be
courtyard.
your entrance to the school. I mean,
Get rid
talk
of the
about
bees.
the history.
well, and that would preserve the historical context
Yeah,
of the
that would be a
building.
nice.
So that would,
That's the original courtyard from the
And if
1960s.
we could really have a state-of-the-art facility. It's just, if we're going to put money into something, it needs to be, and I'm sure that's how they felt when they built this building. And, I think we're all moving in that same vision here. I really do.
so that would put PK to 3 at Millville,
Or 2.
PK
2 or
to
3,
2.
we could pick.
3 to 6 here,
3 to 6, or, okay, here, and then
and
7
through 12 at the high school.
Is that even, like, so, I guess from a real, is that even feasible? Like, is MSBA would they really work with that
That's
facility?
Southwick.
Huh?
That's Southwick's model.
No, I mean, that's what I'm asking is, would they look at that facility and say, yeah, that facility's worth investing,
The MR, you mean? Or
the
building?
high school
The
itself,
high
like the
school
the
itself.
actual structure itself? Or would they say, no, it's better, you should just put an addition on the middle school and be
That
done
would
with
be
it?
part of your feasibility study for the project.
Okay.
So, because you would come to MSBA and say, here's the alignment that our master planning says works best for us, and here's the school that we target for it. And that's as far as you could go. And then MSBA would say you can look at that building, but you have to look at the other buildings you own, and you have to look at building new.
So we have to prove to them that that's where we have land. So yes, this is where the building fits, but we need parking, we need fields. If it's a 7 to 12 facility,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
you have to have, and that,
You
we
can
can
certainly
prove
make
that
an
in our
argument.
feasibility.
Yeah.
We don't, as nice as this building is, it does not have the land for the parking and the fields. If you're bringing that much staff into the building.
Or the security access, so you can get access out of that high school in 2 ways very easily. That back gate moves. You
Yeah,
can get
actually,
out of that room, you can get out of that school from 2 different streets.
Yeah, the high school is much better set up than the
Does that scare you?
Sorry, sir, I just got your text.
Oh, I was more a joke. I don't want to drag you out here,
Yeah,
Scott.
cut on the car, so I figured I'd come in. It's because we're down at one stage on it,
Gotcha.
so I'll text Micah tomorrow, see what's going on,
Okay.
when the thoughts coming in.
Okay.
But I shut down certain zones, so hopefully we'll.
So it'll increase some circulation. All
We're
right.
fine.
Thank you very much,
You're
Scott.
welcome.
Thank you, Scott.
Acclimated.
I just asked, is the
Now,
AC
don't change
really-
it now, I'm kind of comfortable now.
I asked him before, and I was like, is the AC really on?
Yeah, that's a bigger problem.
Yeah. I thought he was gonna,
That would be the site
I thought
where
he
we
was
have
gonna
all of our
text
sports.
back, not just show up.
But that's dedication.
That is-
Oh,
and that is
absolutely,
Scott,
we
yeah.
know.
I,
we know.
yeah, no, I know, I've been working with him
I mean,
since
yeah.
since Matt and I
Outside
started a
people
little
use that.
subgroup.
Scott's awesome.
Auditorium.
Yeah.
He is.
We don't have that piece here. I know but you said MSBA won't fund an auditorium.
Yeah, at the high school
So this
level.
building does not have one.
Right.
So if we wanted to add on here, feasibility study, like out loud, we wouldn't have an auditorium anymore?
You would. It
Just have
probably
to build
would
it.
not be as large as the one that's over at the high school, because they size.
But it
based
wouldn't
on the
be
number of kids.
reimbursed?
You would qualify for it to a certain number of seats. Then above that, you won't qualify for reimbursement. So if you look at the theater that's over there, you would look at what it would need in order to be what you really want it to be, to get a full fly working, to get, upgrade all the electronics and everything else, all the lighting and whatnot.
I feel like that wing has good bones. The gym, the cafeteria, and with just updating.
And that's probably the easiest places to update, because those already have all wide doors. There aren't a lot of classroom doors and heavy
Well-
walls there that would have to get demolished to make things ADA compliant, except
The ramp.
probably those bathrooms right near the cafeteria, if I had to think about, and then the access to the locker rooms downstairs in the gym.
New bathrooms.
But that's not a ton of remodeling for that area, and you already have a gigantic cafeteria that I assume would house the 7 through 12 lunches.
As it used to.
Yeah, because what are they?
As it used to.
So.
Yeah, I mean, and it used to be
It
able to
did.
run through the number of kids through that cafeteria line, and
They
some
figured out
upgrades
4
and
lunches
things.
at the end of this year,
Yep.
Yeah.
right? Just for spacing purposes, so.
Yeah, they can get that.
So when you go through this process with MSBA, I assume you're not, but I don't know, you're not limited to only doing work on the one site, are you? I mean, I understand that, like, that's where the majority of stuff would happen, but let's say we wanted to transform this school into something different.
Right, we also need
and we
changes
said-
here. We also
Right,
need.
let's say we
Need to do
wanted
some
an
upgrades in Millville.
auditorium in this building. Maybe this library space, not saying get rid of libraries or whatever, maybe the library fits in a few other rooms and this space becomes like an auditorium, and that's a small piece of the work that gets done. So it's like, we're not demolishing the building or doing a huge extension, we're just making some significant modifications. Do they entertain that, or?
I can tell you that with Southwick, that's what they pushed Southwick to do.
Oh,
A full
Southwick went-
district.
Southwick went in just to do their elementary school,
Oh, interesting.
and the MSBA pushed them to
Bigger.
rationalize their regionalization, because they had Granby.
Toland, is that
Yeah, so it's Southwick, Granby, Tolland,
Toland? Yeah.
and Tolland was fully participating, and they were the ones furthest out. Granby had their own K through 8 school, and the state said, we'll do all 3 of the schools on the Southwick complex if Granby will agree to join for a K through 8. Which meant that eventually Granby would give up their K through 8 school if population swung. And they did it, and the state upped it and did all 3 buildings. So I think that you could go to them saying, we're a regional school, and we want to address all of our buildings in one move.
So,
Yeah.
And there's
and we've
addressing
already
that
updated
needs
the
being
regional
done.
agreement to deal with that.
Yeah.
We did all the hard work with the
Yeah.
community already around the elementary
True.
piece and
Yep.
reorganizing our regional agreement.
It would take some political lifting,
Mhm.
but if that's, to go in once and say, this is what we want to do, might have a much better audience now. When Southwick was there, Catherine Craven was the executive director, and she was really pushing, let's get these districts done.
That's who we worked with in New Bedford to do
Yeah.
a ton of the projects we did
Yeah,
there.
she was very, very forthright about what she wanted to get done, and she'd
Yep.
go get it done.
Mhm.
But I think that's a discussion a little bit further down the road. The educational piece, circling back to how do you get the teams to work in 7 and 8, and then how do you get them to disperse a little bit, I think ninth grade becomes the crutch and the crux of that discussion of, and that might work around to your clubs in integrating the club activities into the 8th grade and rising 9th grade students, saying, here's a couple of other areas of interest. And, from 9th grade to 12th, school looks a little bit different, but here's some places to start thinking.
Well, I also think the high school principal that's coming in is looking at the the advisory program. So when I said maybe it's not entirely teamed through
Right.
12, but there's certain aspects of it. So whether that's homerooms and or advisories or some of the course offerings that you still see some of the same adults, and you have that connection to them, which.
You guys don't do homerooms anymore?
We've gone back and forth between homeroom and first period.
No, it's like, so
They've had,
Like,
like, over
that's
the
changed
years,
a lot.
that's shifted, yeah.
Yeah, I was just throwing that out too.
I
It's
just,
like
but when you said that, I was like, wait, there's no homerooms anymore? Kids just go right to their first class?
It's gone, like,
Yeah.
back and forth.
yeah.
They don't even do it here anymore. It's their first class.
Yeah,
It's their homeroom.
that's kind of bounced.
Oh, see, that was the greatest thing about homeroom. That was that 5 minutes. You get to talk to the same kids every morning, and everybody does attendance. All right, you're in school for the day now. That's it. The attendance wasn't taken for the rest of the day.
Oh, they do it in the period.
Period.
Mm.
Or when my kids were here and they went to second chance lunch, they had to buy something to mark their attendance.
Second chance lunch.
It's breakfast.
Oh, second chance breakfast.
Oh,
That must have been,
Yeah, they didn't like
did
the
they
afternoon
misbehave or
classes.
something?
that must have been a meal participation boosting project.
A second chance.
Second chance lunch, you get marked
Yeah,
fully present if you come and buy some snacks.
No, yeah.
Our food service is doing much better now. So,
Have you seen any schools go along, so I know with Paul Revelle, the innovation school, kind of like, we had 7 of them in Worcester. I had one inside of my middle school. It was great. It was like a gifted and talented school. It was still there. It was fantastic. But have you seen any districts go with like building a facility for like that type of model or something more assertive, like an in-district charter? I'm not proposing that. I'm just asking,
Right.
like, like a horseman or something.
school within a school.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything like that where people have gone that out, like, outside the box, or no? They haven't put those apples in the same basket?
Yeah, haven't seen much like that.
Risky for
Yeah.
a lot of different reasons, but I
Yeah,
just wondered if,
I think where you see that more is the Connecticut Magnet School program is great for that very specialized type of construction. But,
I know New London has a bunch of
That's
different.
It's a lot of commitment for that marriage, I would imagine.
Yeah,
You
that's,
know,
I was
like,
just,
to do the building based on it, to say like, yeah, we're moving forward with this, program within the school, and
I can bring you one for the next meeting. I'll try to drag up the Fairchild Wheeler.
did Fitchburg do something? I feel like Fitchburg did something like that with one of their middle school programs,
That
and they
rings
had
a-
a
that
charter.
rings a bell.
They had
it was a K-8 arts.
It was a
Yes.
it was an arts program
Yep.
that they ran within that school.
Yeah, I can't think of the name of it, but a friend of mine was a principal there.
Yeah,
Yep.
actually, I think a friend of mine was the principal there too.
Apparently they can't keep their principals.
Yeah.
That's strange.
That marriage of the two programs doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, actually, and it was with the art museum, if I recall. There was a partnership.
Yeah.
That charter program was a partnership with an outside,
On the
the
right.
art museum, or some
Everybody's
other
windows are
program
up.
had ownership in it.
Yeah.
It's red.
Did you all put your windows up? It's now pouring.
That is what she's talking.
I just, at my sunroof, I cracked it, like just the vent point. I think I'm all right.
Okay, so, seems like we've got some stuff to follow through on education. I'd mentioned Fairchild Wheeler. I'll try to bring those plans in. That was a 1,500 student high school that's focused all on project-based learning. And I was involved in the programming and the initial design. It ended up winning the McConnell Award, which is a whoop-de-doo award for international, well, it's worldwide for planning and design of
I was
schools.
gonna say design meets
Yeah.
function.
So,
Does MSCBA do anything extra if you get your schools to like super green standards or LEED certification standards, or
not really. The
But-
state code's pretty much requiring it now, so it's,
and if you get LEED money, I mean if you get MSBA money, that doesn't go against, that's not taken into consideration with if we do a project with National Grid on this design of this school to get it to like super energy efficiency standpoints where they're going to throw a chunk of money at it too. Do those two can both of those sources be chased for dollars?
I
not
don't.
at the same time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't believe MSBA would do full funding if there's another funding source coming in.
National Grid is rebates. anytime you do new building construction, there's
Right.
there's all kinds of specialty rebate money, and if MSBA is going to cover 60% of the building, and you can get 10% more from National Grid and huge funding rebates.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know that MSBA allows you to take the rebate. If they're funding the 60%, I think
They get
They get the rebates?
they get a proportionate share of the rebate.
But all right, but if they get 60% of the rebate,
You get 40%.
that's still 40% of the rebate that you can be chased. So you can pick up some of that extra money.
Yeah.
Because there's so
I don't
much
know
out
the
there right now.
specifics of it. I
but
just am saying.
that would
I
be something to
believe-
know the exacts on when we get a little further down the road, because there's some big money with National Grid right now.
Yeah, generally they'll tell
Efficiency
you that.
designs and
And
things.
putting the chargers out in front of the building.
Yeah.
Oh. And, can you get while you're doing a new building, is there some kind of solar incentive for solar,
absolutely.
putting
That's
solar on a new building? And
That's another big piece. Like,
That's the one they have yet to say yes to. They won't pay for the increased roof loading ability. They
Huh.
won't pay for the increased conduits. They won't pay for any of that. Won't participate in it.
Really?
So,
Yeah.
when the towns have green communities grants for different projects, is that only municipalities that are able to?
Yep, it's separate. Yeah, it's separate for
But
the
the-
municipality.
But the regional district can't go after that
Right,
since
like
you're your
it's
own
not-
little municipality, your own little mini?
We've done some, there's, again, like incentives through National Grid and green programs we can apply for, but that green communities program is specific for the towns. So if the school, because I tried to
Yeah.
get an assessment of doing some work through the green communities grants, and we would have had to have gone through the town, and the town has to allocate their amount of money to the school district.
And the
But
towns-
Millville has done that. That's actually where they've done some of these projects where they're doing a few buildings in the town, and they included Millville Elementary. So they did some of the security upgrades there, and they're currently looking at replacing the pneumatic systems, the controls,
So
the
we'd,
digital.
we'd be limited to the elementary school, well, and
Yeah.
it would have to go through the town.
And
We'd
it
never
has
be
to
able
go through
get
the town.
both towns
town
too.
buildings.
Well, and if we're talking about, I mean, at this point, every conversation we've had, nobody's mentioned what happens to the complex, and if that's the only building Blackstone owns, why would they give you anything towards?
Well, and that's what I was wondering, if there is a push to have a middle high school here, on this site, for whatever reason, then does that mean we're holding on to the complex?
But the complex is your building that has the biggest true health issues, right? Mold and mildew
I
concerns
think
and
that
things
would
like
be a
that.
reason why, in a feasibility study, a 712 here wouldn't work, because we have to invest so much in the complex in order to.
And the high school,
up.
because now
And
you have
you're
to
left
build
with
the
the
high
high
school up
school.
to be able to have all your fields.
Yeah.
So you still need, it's gonna cost you more outlay of money.
You
Right.
still need to keep it.
Right,
I think between the
think-
two buildings, the complex and the high school, they would
Have
both
their
need.
share of concerns.
Right.
But the
So
high
if
school
we
at
have
least
to
has your
pick
fields.
one, which one is going to be more beneficial to our district? And, I mean, field-wise, and we
The property
own
space itself.
the high
but
school. We do
is
not own,
tremendous.
the district owns the high school, it does not own the complex.
Right.
So, do we really want to let,
Do you want to invest a
Let
ton of
go.
money in a space you don't own and then be stuck with a property you do own that all you can really turn it into is ball fields and parking? Because they're not gonna, MSBA is not gonna pay for a full remodel of the high school, this place, the complex, and Millville Elementary.
because
it's
we don't
way
need
too
all
much.
the
You don't need
space.
space, yeah.
Or do we turn the complex into a high school?
and
have
get a
the fields.
taller toilets
Yeah.
and water
Yeah,
fountains.
that would need a full gut.
I was gonna say, I don't even know how you guys keep your administrative offices up there, because they're walking through those hallways, I'm like, I just feel so small in
I
here.
don't think that would be a good high school. But it's interesting, to me, it raises the question, and I'm not suggesting go down this road, but, we talk about the fact that the town owns the complex, and Millville owns MES, and the town of Millville has been trying nonstop to sell us MES for nothing, So if we went in the direction of leaving the Blackstone building for some other uses, and the properties there are already used by the towns,
and maintain?
the youths and the youth sports, and they're maintained. Do we acquire, if we have some work done to Millville, does the district acquire MES and say all of their district buildings are actually regional, like we.
Like they are.
Yeah.
in terms
No, I
of-
mean ownership. I
No,
mean
I- oh,
ownership.
I know,
At the
but I'm
district
just-
itself owns MES, the middle.
Oh, I get
high
it.
school, yeah.
Yeah.
That would stop some of the arguments of who's responsible for cleaning the road.
Right.
It'll also remove an argument against voting for any kind of investment in the district.
Right.
Because you're now saying, you're not going to remove a financial obligation of Blackstone by taking the complex offline and giving it back to them and leaving Millville having to take care of MES. You say, we'll take Millville. We'll take MES. That will just be a regional district that owns all the buildings. But I think
That's what I was
the,
wondering, if MSBA would look at that more favorably and say, if that's part of your plan, like, does that help? Also,
There's
does it,
semantics to them, like whereas.
Yeah, it is in effect what they forced Granby to do. Which they forced Southwick to do, which was to take Granby School. And Granby, from what I recall, Jay Barry might remember better, but from what I recall, I think Southwick, the regional district said, we'll take it until it's no longer used, and then it goes back to the town. And so they had a
a
sunset
phase
clause in
out,
it.
like a phase out plan?
Because it was gonna get to a point where they weren't taking any more kindergarten students in once the work in Southwick was done. So it was gonna get to the point of diminishing returns where it wasn't worth running as a school anymore.
Yep.
And then they would switch everybody over to Southwick.
But if Millville's still in decent enough shape that the district sees as a feasible building for 30 years, with obviously with improvements and stuff as you go, but dumping complex and keeping it versus we'll keep it until we no longer need it, because
Well, I think that part of the reason why I raised that question is, at some point, I know I'm getting, a couple of issues ahead. We're gonna need to sell this to the communities, and they're gonna need to buy into the cost of actually renovating or rebuilding. And that's a concern, that would be one of the biggest concerns, is, okay, well, we're maintaining this building, we own this, and now we're gonna start. But if there was some kind of a big picture plan
Right.
where we said, well, we're gonna own the complex, we'll take ownership of all of it, and then we'll give the complex back after this, and Millville we're gonna keep,
Right.
and now the building's not yours. We're gonna invest in having everything upgraded or, do these renovations.
Ultimately, you need to have that when you're done with this effort, between now and the end of the year. And so part of the focus for next month's meeting was, how are the buildings perceived? And what do you think could be done with one if you took it offline? So part of that's a question back to the town, saying, if you suddenly own the complex again, what could you do with it? The other part is for this group to be ahead of that question. From what you know of the towns, well, if we took it offline, you could make it a sports complex, you could take it down and increase the number of sports fields. You could probably convert it over into housing, but with the amount of work it needs and a change in use, it's gonna be phenomenally expensive to do.
Well, we just did windows, doors, and
Yeah.
boilers and
Yeah.
roof. I mean, it's gotta operate.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. We're still using it, so
Right.
it's been, we're keeping it as effective as we can.
Right.
But if you assume that that's no longer everyday classroom space, is there a use the regional school district has for the complex that we could all see that would justify saying, okay, the district takes over all the buildings, and we have a use for the complex? Maybe it's annihilating a section of the building that's no longer used, but you're still going to keep the AFM side and demolish the JFK, right? Just for an argument's sake.
Yeah.
Is there still a use that the district has for that building?
It's already administration
Yeah.
offices,
Well,
so.
Some of it is.
You also could move.
Those offices are
Yeah,
gigantic.
I mean,
It's weird.
Maybe.
Well, you also-
we've
well,
had
we
some
al-
different ideas around some additional special ed programs,
was
some
thinking
career
the same
planning,
exact
like some
thing.
different.
That's what I was.
Well,
gonna
and
say.
that's kind of why I brought that up, is because we talked about the special need, some of the special learning and the
Yeah.
transitional things and some of that after for the special needs. Could that be something that the district says, okay, we're going to take over all the buildings. We have to do some work in AFM. Maybe JFK just no longer exists at that point, and you just clear that space and turn it into more playground space, more, a dog park, whatever space that becomes. But the plan is, as part of the master plan, we're not just going to give that back to the town. We're going to turn that into our special needs section. That's going to be all of our special needs classes. It's going to be our transitional classes. It's going to be all of these other pieces that we can put in that building to keep it usable, which will help all the nostalgic people in this town, because there's still quite a few of those. When you say, hey, we're going to demolish the high school, we're going to get rid of the complex, we're totally changing everything, because
People panic.
everybody in town's going to be like, well, but I went to that high school. I don't want to get rid of it. Well, we're going to upgrade and remodel. We're going to upgrade the high school with this plan. We're building off the back. Yes, we're going to blow up the front, but hey, we're going to keep the courtyard. So, you know, where all you guys hung out in high school. And we're going to turn the complex into this by changing these sections and removing these sections of the building, and that becomes an easier plan to sell. So it becomes the what do we do with the complex building? Because everyone's kind of on the same assumption, at least from the temperature of this room, or so how it feels, that Millville stays as your K1 through 2. This becomes your upper middle school, and we rebuild our high school, because that's kind of what we have to do. And whether that design, whatever that design ends up looking like, that leaves the complex as the outdog. So do we have a use for that building, or do we have to start talking to the town of, would you take it back? Would you do something
Are
else
we
with
getting
it?
ahead? I don't, are we getting ahead with that thinking right now, or?
That's where you're heading eventually.
We're heading there.
I mean, I'd like to see what we have for demographics, whether we get someone on board to do it, or we just take your demographics from NESDEC and look at what they're doing.
I have a process question, though, before we get off of the building and changing things. Would MSBA ever support any kind of, like, infrastructure changes to, like, connect to public sewage, to public sewer? Water?
They limit the amount of money for site work pretty severely.
Okay.
And
That's
they
another
will not
consideration.
move from it.
Which building are you thinking about?
MES.
Oh, well, but
Yeah.
does MES have any public utilities around there? Isn't Millville all wells and septic?
It is, but it would be the possibility of branching out and connecting to Blackstone's public water system, or Uxbridge. Like, there's options. I've looked at different options with DEP
So you're just trying to get water.
just to get public water into the building.
Yeah, there's, the state, from the school side of it, is very limited on what they'll do for site work like that.
I wonder
Typically,
if there's
but
DEP. I wonder if there's, like, other grants that could, like, join in with
Do you know
MSBA.
what that number is? What it would cost to tie into Blackstone Water or Uxbridge Water?
I don't have a number. That's a big.
that would be a conversation you and I could have in terms of how you might be able to fund that with some grants and whatnot.
Okay. I have some people that we've already been speaking to at the
Yeah,
state
I
level,
would
so.
keep that one going, because I'm thinking at the federal level
Oh, okay.
for infrastructure money now. It might, it'll come through Boston, but
We had,
We did.
yeah, Representative McGovern, Congressman McGovern came to MES and we toured the facility, and he was talking a bit about a similar, like, conversation.
I feel like he said federal. When
did.
you just said
Yeah.
federal, I was like, this is deja vu.
Yeah, we had that conversation with Congressman McGovern.
But you're saying with the new infrastructure, from-
there might be an opportunity to get some money through the infrastructure program.
I honestly think it's funny that we don't know the cost, because it would not take long for it to be a savings to the town, not to us, because they are budgeting over $60,000 a year towards that treatment. Like, it would not take long for that to become a savings to them with an expense to
And
get
then the
that
kids
line
could
over
drink
there.
the water.
Yeah.
If
So in addition to the financial
But it's an easy-
savings,
It's an easy sell, though, when you talk about being able to get better fresh water. It's an easier sell to the parents in these towns.
Yeah.
And if you can get Millville to take 3 years' worth of their water budget
Right.
towards it.
if we knew the expense,
If we knew what that number was,
we might be able
that's
to.
a sales
get it.
pitch.
yeah, but we can, like
Especially
you
the
mentioned,
FinCom
it sounds
that
like,
is around there.
I just wanted to check if that's anything that MSBA ties into these larger projects, but it doesn't sound like it
Because we
specifically.
could present that as a gift.
Who's to say, but if they won't,
We
just
haven't-
because they won't pay for it, doesn't mean that's not something that, if Blackstone water department would be okay with that hookup, it might be worth the conversation of what would that cost to do.
It's a big political
I thought we were
piece. They
closer
would
with
have to.
Uxbridge getting that line
Because there are out
with, when Mike
Off.
was part of it.
there, right? There's a couple streets
So there's
that have
Milk,
Uxbridge.
Milk Street,
And I think some,
no,
some
Orchard,
houses
Old-
have, yeah.
not Milk.
I'm
Orchard.
sorry, I didn't mean to.
Orchard Street and
I didn't
Blackstone
wanna-
has, but
I
Orchard
didn't
Street
mean
and
to
Blackstone
bring
has
this
town
up.
water,
It
because I have it
ends.
just
That's
across
It
the
something
street.
ends, and then it,
If
I mean, it's almost,
gonna be part of the
it can't be a
federal
direct line,
infrastructure package,
but
like, we need to start
Maybe the same
thinking-
distance.
then there's,
between the last
Uxbridge
Blackstone.
up Kempton Road,
Kempton, yeah.
Okay.
and then
Yep.
you'd go
Forget
right
that's-
up
That's the close to
through
Uxbridge.
the woods.
And some of those houses.
That might
in
be the
Kempton
most
have
direct route
Uxbridge
because it's, but
But are you
that,
going
that's
through,
the
but if you're
direction of
going through,
our well.
but if you're going through wetlands, that becomes a DEM
No,
nightmare.
there's
That
a-
was
this,
there was something
Killer-
about wetlands in our
Killing-
last conversation with
With
Uxbridge.
Uxbridge, yeah, I was gonna say,
I
there's gotta,
remember
if you're,
it. I remember
when,
that
as soon as you
very
say going straight
clearly.
through the woods, there ain't an ounce of woods around here that doesn't have wetlands in
Wetlands.
it.
There was something with that. I
Yeah,
remember
so,
that coming
so
up
it
at
might
the
be a
last
conversation
discussion
with Blackstone, and I know everything becomes political in this town, but, both of these towns. But that might be a better conversation to be had, that the district could have with Blackstone and say, hey, look, we need to get better water to our kids. Is there a cost we could do with this? And then what does the water cost become versus energy savings and treatment savings?
The DEP has been looking at the schematics for that for a long time. So Millville's been on the radar for the DEP for ages, because I've been over there and to the office in Worcester and met with them. And I think they identified areas where there's the potential for connecting to other public sources. And I think there is a pretty straight shot that they identified to connect to Blackstone's public water. I don't want to, I'm not entirely, recalling the conversation, but I know we talked about,
Is that something we could find out deeper about?
it's more a political, it's more like, that's the town's purview, and, we're not looking to get into the politics of it, because you're talking about,
Well, it's not our building.
they also have to come up with some type of an agreement for the public water system to be going cross towns, so. It's definitely been done.
Maybe with their students
Yeah.
all together, though.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent
Could be a-
I mean,
justification.
there would
yeah.
still be a water bill if it was one
Yeah.
connected.
Oh, that's
somewhere.
true.
There would still be an
The
expense.
water bill.
No, there'd still be a water bill,
yeah.
but now you have treatment, electricity for the pumps.
Yeah, that'd be
So-
cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, everything else that goes with it.
Forget about it. The reliability is more important to me. When you're talking about the school and what's going on with the water, where I'm supposed to get an analysis tomorrow. The water company is going to be out at the well tomorrow to see what's going on with, rates, pumping rates. So that's constant. To get rid
Wells
of
aren't-
that
like your
factor.
wells aren't staying
Yeah.
wet.
No, they're wet. They have stuff in them.
But
Oh,
there's
oh, well,
just-
so the
it's a
first meeting I asked a
constant
question about how you had
challenge.
H85s present in that building, because I didn't realize that you had, if it's a well, that you guys were pumping it to a storage tank, treating a storage tank, and then, because all that stuff comes from just treating water. That's why I was so unsure how those levels were so high in Millville
Yep.
when it's well water.
That's
Well water was the greatest thing in the world, except you guys
That's
have
the
to.
town's
The why
answer.
behind it.
That
Yeah.
was the town's
We've-
fix.
We've got to treat it for the lead and for the lead and copper.
Treatment is the issue
And the
with-
treatment creates
Causing
the
more
haloacetic acids,
why
which
they don't drink
the
it.
levels are too high, so they can't be consumed.
And the results are always behind.
Yep.
So we don't let the kids.
Because even if they say, okay, it's clean this month, you don't get those results
Correct.
for so long.
Till it could be, right, then that could change.
Oh, you shouldn't have been really drinking that last month.
So who's gonna?
Because they
have
did
the
open
kid?
them for a little while,
So
and
what
I
do
was
you
like,
do?
nope.
So
Here's your water.
Yeah, exactly.
Bottle, we have water.
you just give away bottled water in town?
We have bottled water, the kids bring water.
Bubblers, they're instructed to bring, and then we have bottles available, yeah. Bubblers, I mean like
It's not
bottled Poland
bottled.
Spring.
No.
The
Big,
Poland
Yeah, like the
Spring
5 gallon,
bottlers,
like the
yeah.
5 gallon jugs.
Yeah, the coolers.
There's a savings to the district, so I gotta imagine that's gotta cost a penny or two, getting that much water in.
Anytime you run a public utility, it comes with a lot more than just, I need a water line here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because every property that it goes past is going to get an assessment.
Huh.
And that makes you instantly unpopular.
Okay.
Because that's how you pay for water lines and sewer lines, so.
if you're stretching it all that way, could all those people get water too?
Yeah. And but you pay the
And then
assessment
why
whether
can
you
they
get
have
water
it
or
on
not.
that side of Millville and not?
How come there's gas up to the bend in my street, but not
I
down
like
into the
my well
cul-de-sac?
water.
Why can't have gas?
I don't ever pay.
National Grid said Liberty Utilities now, said if I wanted gas, I can have it. Just cost me 50 grand. So if you want water, you can have it. It's just gonna cost you X amount of dollars. That's how it
about what
works.
comes to.
It's great.
So,
It was actually like 68,000.
Yeah, I'm like,
Wow, that's a lot for.
Well, I have a half-mile long driveway,
Yeah.
and the gas line is 500 feet up the street where the road turns. That's where it ends. So they have to come all the way down the street and then all the way up my driveway. Yeah, it was cheaper when it was Blackstone Gas. It was only like 45 grand when I first bought the house.
gosh.
Bigger
Do it.
companies not always better. But that would be the other thing. So like any of our buildings that aren't gas. So this building is oil. High school's already gas. The complex is gas.
This
Millville is new.
Millville is
Yep,
propane.
propane.
Millville is propane.
You won't get gas out there anytime soon because
We don't
that's
have
too far
gas
away
out
from the
there.
lines. But
We're good with propane.
is
There's
this building,
gas here. There's
This
gas.
building's
here.
already gas?
At least partly. Yeah.
So what is next, sir?
okay, what did we put down?
Where do we go? We got a lot of awesome ideas. I got
Yeah.
like a whole bunch of colors on my notes here.
Yeah, that's what I have too. I had
Color-coded this and
the
like-
grade configuration as the focus of July. So we can take that as some work and maybe start thinking about what, kind of continue this conversation
Okay.
for grade configurations and what do you do with the buildings and what do the buildings need? Without trying to make the buildings what they need to be in the future, what do they need now? Why would you want to continue to own them? Kind of the conversation we were just having, but try to bring that to an end, and then if we can get demographics into August, then we start figuring out how to put all this stuff together into something.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Is there a what is the master process for this? Like, so we're all taking notes, we're all brainstorming these ideas. Like we're writing a statement of interest. It's like how do we pull this all into one? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yep. Typically, what we'd end up doing is I'll take the notes from the educational piece and turn them into a section on an educational plan, where
I
we
see.
want to go. And then we'll pull, grade alignment will be a section of, so we think if we want to deliver like this, here's our strengths, here's our weaknesses, here's what we can do. We think this grade alignment best serves that, so we'll do a little section on grade alignment. Then the facilities piece is going to rely heavily on the facilities assessment we just wrote, saying, here's what we have,
So
but
there's
here's what
tons,
we
yeah.
think we can do.
Already there. Okay.
Yeah, and then what you're going to do is eventually come out, it's probably just going to be those three sections, and then it'll come, so based on those three, we think the best direction for the district is this. And now what do we need in order to get that? So that would be the last section. In order to get a 7 through 12 high school that can do this, we need a building of about this size, situated there, likely at the existing high school site. That leaves Hartnett, if we made that a 3 through 6, then here's what we think that building might need. And then with Millville as a pre-K2 or K through 2, here's what we think that building would need. And that would be the final outcome of this. That would be your master plan for the district. So it sounds deceptively simple.
Oh
Does
yeah,
that
I don't
include
think
like a timeline to actually do all of this, or no? Just what we want to see?
I put this down with months for points of discussion, and I think we'll run hit or miss on that as we go. And then I need to start turning it into text that I can send out to people and you go, yeah, okay, that makes sense, or can we say it differently? Because if we can write it in real time, like, get it out to people like we did the homework assignment and have it reviewed and come back in, then when you're done, the report's done.
Right.
Otherwise, it takes me to like Easter to get through all the notes and whatnot.
Yeah.
You don't have the time for that. So.
I also meant like the final projects, like when, like if this was our plan to renovate the high school, are we saying 5 years from now, 10 years from
Probably.
now?
You're
Like,
probably 5 years out.
okay. Do we put that in the plan, or does that just kind of come out of?
It will, your plan's gonna get you to, we need this now.
Okay.
And then MSBA is going to say, prove it to us.
Okay.
And so the more complete this and the facilities assessment are, the more they tie together, the better opportunity you'll have to go up there and make a case for it. Because there's no guarantee that they'll take you in the first year. It could be 2-3 years of having to submit this thing.
So, as a curiosity, if you submit a plan to MSBA for, hey, this is what we need to do this, this, and this, at that point, do you stop doing anything but extreme crucial repairs on a building like the high school?
Yeah, they don't look nicely upon you ignoring it, so you do have to keep it up and running and safe, but.
That's what I mean, like, aside from like major catastrophic things, but
Yeah.
you kind of stop any other,
Yeah, you wouldn't,
Any
you
other work till you
wouldn't
know
go
what that
through and do a
building's gonna
window
do.
program at the high school if that was your target in an SOI program. You
Forwarded
wouldn't
you
do
an
those.
email with some of what you're
Gotcha.
asking.
So, I'm thinking if there's a date for July, then we put this grade configuration and building discussion continued at that meeting. That would probably give us some great direction.
so July, I'm only available, if we're looking for like Monday, or for Tuesday, Wednesday, the 27th and 28th would be pretty much the only days in July that I am in town.
And I am out of town those days.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think between the superintendent's conference and our trying to get some
Well,
vacation. I
Isn't that
think
why we
July
put
is
this meeting
pretty
back into June?
Yeah.
Was because
Yeah.
July was so tough?
July was so tight.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the other way to do is jump July and just go to
Early
August.
August.
You want to go
Because
to
this was
Early
kind of our,
August.
Yeah.
July meeting was
Yeah.
pulled
I'm out of
earlier.
town then, too.
So
Lucky
early
you.
August, my only request would be not the 3rd, because that's my daughter's 15th birthday.
That is important.
Fun.
Taking her to the Grand Canyon this year, so
That's
I'm leaving
nice.
for a couple of days.
So
in
you're
Oh,
really
that's
not
awesome.
available.
That's
It's not like
really
you're
awesome.
having a
That is a very big
cookout
day.
or birthday cake at the
That's
kitchen
super
table.
cool.
You're away.
No, the third is just I always take her out to dinner on her birthday. But
that's
in
nice.
July, I'm taking her to the Grand Canyon. So
Fun.
the air conditioning guy is running away for a little while in the dead of summer.
To the heat.
To the Grand Canyon.
That's where she wanted to go. So every
That's
5 years
awesome.
she gets to pick somewhere. We went to Niagara Falls for her 10th birthday.
Oh, super
fun.
So
cool.
this year's the Grand Canyon. She wants to see the natural wonders.
I don't blame her.
Yeah, I'm
It's
sensing a
gorgeous.
theme.
Smart choice.
One has water coming over him, the other one doesn't.
When the water's way down
Yeah.
below.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we have a cool trip planned for that. in
So you can't
July,
do that
so.
week either, Sarah?
I will be in Nebraska.
I'm away the following week.
Not nearly as.
I was gonna say,
You
not
can't do
quite the
any
Grand
day.
Canyon.
You can't do any day the first week of August.
No, I mean, unless I could call in somehow and have Aaron run the meeting.
August 10th, that Tuesday, 10th or 11th?
I'm out of town that week.
You're
but
out that week.
If
The
the
whole week?
majority can do it, have it. Like, we're gonna have to, at some point, know people are gonna miss.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't like this one.
I can make the 11th work. I can make the 4th work. I can.
I can make either of those days work, and we could probably set up a way for you to be able to zoom in if you have the time to be able to get to. I don't know what your out of town plans are. We
It's
don't really want to
Nebraska, I'll
impose.
make time.
There's always time to zoom
plenty
if
of
you're
time.
in Nebraska. So we want to say the 4th?
We do have internet too.
Oh, all right, so you can totally get
Does the
it.
4th work for everybody?
I can do the 4th.
Yeah.
Sarah, you can zoom?
Yeah, I'll zoom in.
Zoom.
Matt's really good at setting those up. Google Meetings. Sure. Awesome at those.
Try.
Same time, 5:30, 7:30.
5:30 to 7:30. That seems to work.
Do we want to try to put September on the book right now too, or is that too
Sure.
much?
All right, September.
I have nothing planned for the entire month of September, so I'm game with any day you guys want. It's too far out for me to have planned my schedule yet. Except obviously Labor Day.
You want to do Wednesday? You want to?
Wednesdays
School
seem
committee
good.
meetings Wednesdays or Thursdays?
Thursdays.
Okay.
It's the first day
I
of
think I know
school.
that. We've changed it. I feel like every year.
The second,
2nd of September, so it's before Labor Day this year.
Yep. It's been before for a while, but it's only one day this year. We
It's
haven't
just
doing
said
two.
Thursday.
I thought it was always before, and then the past couple, like last year it was.
September 8th
Oh,
is the
because
day.
of, yeah,
COVID threw us all off.
Yeah.
September 8th, that's the day before the school committee meeting. Oh, I think.
Right.
So do we want to do the day before school starts? That way it's before you guys start getting hectic, or is that horrible for you two with?
That's actually
Right.
worse because
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, we're doing last minute building
Yeah,
suites
before-
before
yeah,
the kids come in
before
to
the
make sure
school
everything's
opens.
like- yeah.
Yeah, if everything's not ready by the time school opens, we're in trouble.
I just didn't know if the first week of school opening was rougher for your schedules.
Yeah,
than-
no,
Yeah, no,
we
once
appreciate
we're,
it.
our crazy time is July and August. Every month is crazy, but in terms of wrap up, prep, and launching.
does
So
the
once
8th
we're the first week of school, like when the kids are in, we actually breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
Does
So
the
the
8th work?
8th works for, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Usually people still like each other then too, so we don't hear from a lot of people yet.
Oh, yeah, this year.
About a week. That all changes. So the 8th at
5:30 to
5:30?
7:30.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
And then in August, we can figure out more.
Okay, that works. Nice.
I almost want to at some point figure out the rest of the year so that I can, because November, December, I usually do a lot of traveling.
I don't have my kids' fall sports stuff yet, but
Well, that's why I said it. Maybe we wait until like
That's
school
late.
starts to get closer to we can figure out the sports schedule. So maybe in September we can set up the rest of the year. That way, I can
Sounds
coordinate
good.
my downtime.
All right.
Well, that rain brought the temperature down. It's 77 outside,
Wow.
according to the weather app.
drop.
So it's cooler outside than inside.
It feels cooler in here significantly already.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's,
The rain helps the
Matt, I don't
Whatever
know how
Scott
you're
did.
wearing
Reject
long
heat faster.
sleeves.
I know.
yeah, it does,
Warm over there.
probably doesn't help.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely
Thanks.
rest of the evening and have a wonderful.